This is the Clean Energy Show with Brian Stockton and James Whittingham.
Hello and welcome to episode 49 of the Clean Energy Show. I'm Brian Stockton.
And I'm James Whittingham. Welcome to an entertaining discussion of the week's news in clean energy and transportation. Brian Stockton, how are you today? It's cold out.
I'm cold and I didn't sleep that well last night, so I'm tired.
You didn't sleep well. Oh, no. You're going to require 2 naps today or just a power big one?
I'm thinking it's a 2-nap day. Absolutely.
It's 2-nap day. You can pull that off.
Quick nap while we're recording here, if you don't mind. But yeah,
a lot of people do as I go on, as I drone on, and it's a good opportunity to nap. So anyway, last night it's minus 28 Celsius in Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada, and that's where we're coming to you from. Brian's in his bomb shelter. I'm in my bedroom in Uplands, Regina. I found that my car, my 2013 Nissan Leaf, the little light on the dash came on to indicate that the battery heater was on. And I'd hardly ever, I think I'd only seen it once in the, and by the way, my car just turned 8 years old. A lot of people think electric cars don't last. Well, this is a first generation car that is going strong. I don't see it not lasting another 8 years or whatever, like it doesn't seem to have a problem. Anyway, last night I noticed though, since we don't use the car because of the pandemic as much, there is sort of a different patterns going on. See, what it does, Brian, is it charges to 100%. Even when it's not charging, if it needs to take heat from the grid, if it's plugged in and needs to take heat from the grid, it will keep charging. So I went out there last night and it was at 98%. Even then, I didn't tell it to go to 98%. So what I did is I unplugged the car for the first time, which is not something I'm comfortable with, but in theory, you're supposed to be able to unplug the car and have it go from the battery, have it heat the battery heat, which I think is only like 300 watts. So it's actually less than some block heaters. Yeah. Block heaters which heat the oil in cold climates like ours. And sometimes it's about the same depending on the car. But anyway, I went out there this morning to have a big announcement for my research to see how much battery it used. And I left the damn car on all night. I didn't turn it off.
Yeah.
The heater wasn't on, but the car was on, like the dash was on. So I don't have an accurate reading, but it went down to 78% from 98%. And keep in mind, this is a small battery.
Yeah,
how many kilowatt hours is your battery?
What's that?
How many kilowatt hours is your battery?
Mine's 50 kilowatt hours. 50.
So this one's 24, half the size. And so I guess if all things were equal in your car, it would have gone down 10% or something like that, if things were equal. But you have more things going on. You have Sentry Mode and Bitcoin mining for Elon Musk, I think, is going on in the background in your car. Yeah. So I could, So it's the first time I've ever done that. It's you're supposed to be able to just park it on the street and let them heat themselves, and that's one of the advantages of EVs that I talk about in my presentation. You don't even have to plug them in. They will heat themselves. It's like having a built-in block heater that is remotely using electricity. Yeah,
you just got to make sure it's plugged in at least technically, it's best practice to plug it in every night, but obviously under your scenario, you could leave it for a few days.
So I just, I didn't want it to charge to 100% because my kid is going to school every other day. So I'm not terribly paranoid about leaving it at 100%. But the thing is, when it does this, it goes beyond 100%. So when I get into the car, and it's only been a couple occasions this has happened, it will charge beyond 100%. Like, remember how we talked about how batteries will leave a buffer? Like 100% is not really 100%. And that's why the lithium batteries in cars last a long time, is because they leave a buffer at the top and bottom. So they're not completely strained at full power or empty. And but it goes beyond 100%. So I drive around for 15 minutes. And on one occasion I did this, and it stayed at 100%. Maybe 2 occasions I did that. So it actually goes beyond. And I'm thinking that's not healthy for the car, especially to sit around like that. So it's something to keep in mind, and something you rarely hear, because not everybody lives in minus 28. So there's not a lot of data on very cold climates like ours. But I thought it was interesting.
And there's no setting, like you can't set it to just charge to 95%?
No. In fact, the newer generations of Leafs, you can't even get it to charge to 80%. I can set it to charge to 80%, but then what I'm saying is it'll charge to 80%, but in this case, I had a timer set so that it was at 80% in the morning, so that I'm charging overnight where there's less, coal involved. It's a cleaner grid at night. I'm assuming. I've yet to hear back from our utility on that, but I'm assuming that. And also, well, it's just not in peak hours, so that much I know. And I don't know. I was charging overnight, so even if I wasn't charging, it would charge anyway, is what I'm saying, and it would keep going.
Yes, and you bring up an interesting point that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the fact that we don't have time of day pricing for our electricity here where we live. And it never concerned me before. It never seemed like it was a problem, but I would certainly prefer to charge my car overnight when, if the price was lower, but we don't have that option here.
Weren't they trying to get that option, but the power meters lit on fire and several occasions?
That prevented it. Yeah, they were trying to.
Those were the smart meters.
Install some new smart meters. So you would need you need smart meters for this to work. I'm not so sure.
Yes, you do. You do need that. How else would they know? I mean, how much power you're using at 6 a.m. or they'd have to have different meters. And those were the meters that they were going to. They didn't say we're putting in these smart meters. They're saying we're putting in these smart meters so you don't have to have meter readers come by. Mm-hmm. By the way, my solar meter reader couldn't get into my yard for the first time a couple of days ago because of the windstorm we had. I'm delighted to say that all my solar panels are working. I was worried because that I may not find out that they might be snow covered. Well, the snow blew off, and we had that big storm last week, and it was just nasty up there. Yeah,
mine are completely covered with snow, and I'm getting anxious about it, so I may get up on the roof in a couple of days once it warms up and clear a little bit of it. I was going to try not to do that because, I don't know, the amount of power I'm losing is pretty small and at this time of year, but yeah, it just drives me crazy that they're up there and not producing power.
Having solar panels and even a passive solar house like I have with lots of south-facing windows, you really start to see the climate changing. Like the sun is becoming more powerful, and right now it will actually become the most powerful as far as heating my house goes. It'll have the most ideal angle going through the window from now until about, the next 6 weeks is probably prime heating time for the sun. And you see that on your solar graphs that the days are getting longer. You just see it getting bigger and bigger all the time already. In fact,
that brings me to rammed earth construction homes, which is something I wanted to talk about. I just learned about this a week ago. It's a type of construction similar to what your house does. Yours is a passive solar house that collects the sunlight and warms the house in the winter. So rammed earth homes are often that type of house, passive solar, where it's kind of similar to concrete, but it's mostly dirt. Like you take a bunch of dirt with a little bit of concrete powder and clay or various materials, and you compress them, and you can build houses out of this. And I was kind of surprised. I'd never heard of this until a week ago, because this is exactly the kind of, innovative construction that I'm interested in. And I suspect it's because, dirt doesn't have a real big corporate lobby. You can make your home mostly out of dirt. And but I was fascinated. I think I would love to build a rammed earth house in a, passive solar type configuration. It sounds like it's ideal for that.
It doesn't even have to be passive solar. You could build a rammed earth shed if you wanted to, technically. Yeah. I mean, or a pool house or whatever.
Yeah, and people have made fences out of it as well.
Is that right?
It's apparently the Great Wall of China is at least partially constructed of rammed earth. And
that's holding up fairly well.
It's holding up pretty well, as they say.
Better than a lot of houses built at that time.
Yeah. But it really, I was really fascinated to learn about that this week. And it's what you would do in a climate like ours is you would basically build 2 rammed earth walls with rigid foam insulation between them to give you some extra insulation.
Rigid?
Pardon me?
Why rigid foam insulation? I have that in my house, and it's not very good for sound.
Oh, is that right? Yeah. I don't know. That just seems like... I guess you maybe don't want any give to it because when you would have to put the insulation in and then tamp down the rammed earth around it. Right. So you probably need something that's kind of structurally rigid like that.
So I used to know a guy who did concrete form foundation construction in Regina. So you have a large form of foam and a little bit of structural steel and wire inside, and you fill it with concrete. And I used to live in a wartime house, these tiny houses they built after World War II, A-frame houses, and there was several of them on my street, and one of the guys lifted up his house and put in a concrete, what is it called? Insulated
concrete form.
Insulated concrete form basement. So that seemed like a good idea because of our clay here and the water. You're not going to have water going through the styrofoam or the cement as well. And it just seemed like a good idea and a nicely insulated and a usable space. I don't know how it worked out for them, but I admire that they went that way.
Yeah. And my previous research into, passive solar houses and heavily insulated houses, kind of like yours, is that the wall structures is usually quite complicated. Like there's many, many layers of stuff. It's like a layer of plastic, then a layer of spray foam, and then wood. And then, you got to watch for thermal breaks where you can't have anything connecting the inside to the outside. And it seems quite complicated with many different steps in the path that can fail. But I don't know, everything I've read about rammed earth, this seems to kind of solve all these problems. The rammed earth is a water barrier as well as a vapor barrier, and it's resistant to pests and rodents and decay and all that kind of stuff. It
seems like it shouldn't
breathable.
be though, but it's just dirt that is rammed. You take a pole and you between like two boards and you ram it and compress it, and you also what do? You add some Portland cement. But a lot less, like 90% less than you would in a concrete foundation, or whatever, concrete wall. And it retains heat somehow, too. I don't know how that works. Like, do you think that our clay soil has any advantages? Because I noticed when they do some of the things I saw on the internet, they actually sort of put soil and water and they shake it up and let the different sediment fall to see what the clay soil is. And the clay content because they want a certain amount of clay. Well, we're all clay here. Hell, I think you could build a house out of clay. Just dig in the ground here.
I mean, if anything, it might be too much clay. I don't know because, you need the right formulation of, sand and concrete and all this kind of stuff.
The problem with clay is it expands and contracts with moisture level. And that's why our basements here in Regina, where we're built on clay, are, they crack and they shift and they're terrible. And the streets are all terrible. And why do we build on clay? I don't know why. We could have built anywhere. Why do we build on clay? Brian?
But yeah, the rammed earth, it gives you a lot of solar mass, for collecting heat from the sun and then have it, dissipate overnight. And it's apparently breathable where it will actually kind of, if there's too much moisture in the house, it kind of absorbs the moisture. And then if the house gets too dry, it kind of releases the moisture. Sounds ideal. So I'm sold.
It's like it's like a cement floor absorbing the sun. You have the walls that are absorbing the moisture and releasing the moisture to have it at an even level, which is interesting, especially for a dry climate like us where it varies.
Yeah, it moderates and regulates the temperature for you. And in a warmer climate, you don't even need a furnace in a building like that. We, of course, would, but there you go.
So a couple hours north of us, I saw an architect building a house there. And they had this very nice wavy color patterns, like they chose the soil with different colors, and it looked very nice. But you know what, Brian? I'll tell you a secret. You know where I'd like my rammed earth house? I'd like to have a little house in the desert. I think it's a perfect place for it. Terracotta roof.
I thought you were going to say a little house on the prairie, but okay.
That's the same thing, except there's cacti.
But yeah, I really like the look of it too. It's and you can put different pigments in it to get different colors, and you tend to build it up in layers so it kind of looks like sedimentary rock. And it's the finished finish on the inside and the outside of the house. So you don't have to do drywall, you don't have to paint, you don't have to put up aluminum siding.
It amazes me that you could just compress dirt and it won't get wet. It won't for years,
Somehow
decades.
It works. I mean,
centuries.
I don't quite understand why. And obviously, you've got to get the right formulation. And it sounds like you often put a bit of a sealant on it, too. Like that might be the only kind of non-natural part
right?
of the process.
Okay,
sort
I
of
was
a
wondering
plasticky
about that.
sealant is perhaps necessary. I'm not sure.
So this concept has gone back, what, hundreds of years? Or thousands even? Why hasn't it taken off? Like, I know passive solar has gone back hundreds and hundreds of years too. Why, say, when Europeans settled the prairies here, did they not make rammed earth houses? Because all you needed was dirt and a few other materials.
Yeah,
and then you could have faced it south, and they just weren't thinking. They had these terrible shacks with gaps in the wood with no insulation, and it's as cold as it is today. You know, and you look back at the records, whenever it's like minus 50 or something, or minus 45, it's always back in like 1892, and I'm thinking, my God, these people, they must have died. They must have had their feet right in the fire.
Had literal sod shacks here in the prairies. People build houses out of sod. It's
the wind went
crazy.
right through them.
Yeah. But I certainly, in a modern context, like I said at the beginning, I think we don't know more about this because there's no corporation that's pushing it. You know, there's so many modern building tools and materials that are quite interesting. And I'm, like spray foam and stuff like that. It's great stuff. But, there's no dirt council to kind of spread the word about dirt.
All right, Brian, last night in the city that I just mentioned, a couple of hours north of us, Saskatoon, they opened their first Tesla, what should I call it, a dealership or service center?
Store, I think, is the usual word.
They do have 3 lifts for repairing cars there. And I'm going to play you a report now from that opening.
Move over, Maserati. There's a new player in Saskatoon. A Tesla store/dealership has landed on the prairies. With an Elon Musk flamethrower in hand, Tesla owners burned through the ceremonial ribbon, marking the opening of the Tesla store in Saskatoon.
Today was a pretty big day for Saskatchewan. We got our first Tesla store. So this is really exciting for us. People are able to now get test drives. Right now they have a Model 3 and a Model Y. They'll be getting in a Model S and a Model X right away for people to test out. There
you have it, Brian. It's open. You would have picked up your car there, right?
Yeah, I had it delivered to my house, which was nice and convenient. But yeah, in the new times, I would have had to drive to Saskatoon to get it.
Yeah, but that would have been good. They would have given you a tour of the car. You could have inspected it for defects and refused order quite easily if there was any problems. And you're used to going to Saskatoon anyway, right?
I love Saskatoon. I was a little surprised by that figure in the story. 237 Teslas exist here in Saskatchewan. I would have thought the number would be higher by now because I tend to see them quite a bit now. So I'm surprised it's still so few.
Yeah, I am too. And I don't know where they're getting their figures from. Maybe they're lagging, or maybe I can't trust the insurance company for giving the right things, or maybe that's just their membership of the club. I don't know. But I will say this about Tesla owners, especially in Saskatchewan, they are excitable young men who go out to these things with a flamethrower. And I saw one of the employees was coming out to make sure they didn't burn down the building because the flame was kind of close to the building. I was cringing a bit, but yeah, it's exciting to have it open. I mean, it's just my family was surprised when I told them. It seems to be in anticipation of things to come rather than what's here. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. And of course, this is the genius of Tesla, like with their charging network. I mean, they literally built a charging network here with only a couple of hundred cars around. It's crazy.
If that, because a lot of them came in the last year, I bet. In fact, when I was on the radio about not much more than a year ago, they quoted a insurance company figured that there was only 230 some electric vehicles period on Saskatchewan roads. And now I didn't know what to say to that other than watch out, because it's, something that doubles every year is going to suddenly surprise you one day soon.
Also, there was an interesting story going around on Twitter this week about those flamethrowers. So that the Boring Company, Elon Musk's other company, the Boring Company, they're the ones that sold the flamethrower. It was a sort of a fundraising idea. They made a couple thousand of them and made $10 million. But anyway, there was a good story going around this week. Lots of people have gotten into trouble trying to transport those across borders. And, there's certain countries where this is a restricted weapon.
Yes.
And, they labeled it as not a flamethrower to get around potential regulations. But that
throws a flame, but
people have literally spent time in jail because of those flamethrowers.
It's just a really poorly designed lighter. That's all it is. By the way, I bought one of those lighters that you were talking about on the show, and I don't think I ever mentioned it to you.
You said you were going to order one, so you finally
I got it for Christmas, Brian.
Yeah.
It's around here somewhere. I just can't see it because it's dark. But yeah, I'm actually quite impressed with it. In fact, I threaten my children with it because it's a little electrical arc at the end. So I'll be keeping them in line. It's like a cattle prod in a way. It's very cool. And I hope I don't lose it. It's black. I think black was the only color. I would have preferred like orange or red or yellow or something that I could drop in the dirt and camping and not lose. But I've had so many problems with lighters. I've gone through, because you need them when you're camping in a tent trailer, because you need to light either a barbecue or a gas burner or a hot water heater that I have. What else? There's all kinds of things that you have to light, campfires and such, and this will be reliable and all. Yours is still going strong, right? Please let it be.
Yeah, it did. Sometimes the battery did run down quicker than I expected. Like,
really?
I've had to charge it a couple of times. Like, it's supposed to be good for 500 lights, but we were using it quite a lot around Christmas, and then it would have like a couple of bars left on it, and then suddenly it would be out of juice. Like,
really?
So that's my only warning, is make sure it's charged.
Okay. Well, I have, that's another thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention in our big power outage, 2 Wednesday nights ago, biggest power outage I've ever been in. Some places in the world call it a power cut. It's 11 hours without power. And you know what I used and felt really comforted by was my e-bike battery. Because my e-bike battery is sitting in the kitchen in the little charging center we have, full of power and not doing anything over the winter, as you can imagine. And it's got a USB port on it. So someone was able to charge their phone. And I don't know how many phone charges we could get out of that battery. It's probably 13 amp hours or something, but a lot, we could use it for days. We could survive in a Holocaust with one of those things. And then I could go and hunt sheep with it or something as well.
I guess I should go out to my car and, charge up our phones in the car.
Well, there's that. I could have done that as well. But it was 128 kilometer an hour winds. I still have to find siding for my house. I'm never going to find siding for my house. I broke a piece of siding with a door slamming when the kids were smaller, and I haven't been able to find siding that matches the particular pale gray of my siding, or my family thinks it's white. I say it's gray.
Right.
I can't find it.
Some blew off in the storm. Is that what you said?
Yes, sir, it did. And not on the leeward side of the wind. Like, that's where the damage was done. I think that it was poorly put together after I had a contractor put in new windows. They never quite had the siding right, and I've been up there a couple of times, and it was a nasty streak of wind. Yeah, no, I need some soffit and fascia repair on my house too. So, and mine's a massive, giant grain elevator of a house, and I it's the siding is over old siding, so I'm not worried. But aesthetically, it's bad and kind of embarrassing, but I don't know. Maybe I can get it hand painted. Does anybody who's listening know about hand painted vinyl siding to match a color? I'd be happy to hear about it. Anyway, Brian, what else do you want to talk about this week? Well, there's a big story about New York City pension funds divesting from fossil fuels. And of course, the big American story was an announcement from the new president that they're going to switch the entire federal fleet of vehicles over to electric. And there's a new cross-channel power line between England and the UK to trade power. I thought that was pretty interesting. England and the UK. Did you misspeak there? Sorry, is that what I said? Yeah. Between France and England. France and England. Yeah, which way is the power going? Just sharing back and forth?
Yeah, so there's now the ability, the UK is going to mostly import, it's a two-way thing, but they can import some of the nuclear power that's produced in France, which is cleaner than cleaner and cheaper than some of the power that they produce in the UK.
Cleaner and cheaper? Because it exists? I thought nuclear was still pretty expensive.
Yeah, there's a channel on YouTube, Answers with Joe. I don't know if you ever see that, but he talks about lots of science type topics. And he did a video recently about this very topic of the various costs of different types of electricity as they exist now. And I was quite surprised. Nuclear comes in quite cheap. Now, there's difficulties getting new plants built because they're so expensive, but the existing ones that are running, they're very large and they produce a lot of power, and it kind of goes on and on and on. And, so the cost is quite low.
All right. And I also wanted to talk about a survey that was done in the United States about pickup truck owners. And it surprised me because they found that 40% of pickup truck owners would be completely open to buying a all-electric pickup truck. Now, I thought that would be lower. That's pretty good, considering there aren't any on the market. They haven't actually seen their neighbors drive one. They haven't, seen reviews of one yet or anything like that. They're not on the market. They're just all, well, I mean, if you look closely, you can see the Rivian. Certainly in a long way up. And by the way, Apple TV just sent me an email saying that I get free Apple TV for another 6 months. Woohoo! So I was only supposed to get it for a year with my Apple TV box. Yeah. And that would have expired December 6th. And then they said, no, we'll give it to you to February. Now they're giving it to me because they want me to get hooked, Brian. They want me to get hooked on their Apple TV programming. So I'm just,
Hey, did you see the Ted Lasso show on Apple TV?
No, my son, he was a big soccer fan, refuses to watch it. So it's banned in my house. He just thinks it's a stupid concept and refuses, even though he's I don't know. He's just...
I agree. It is a stupid concept, but it's a surprisingly entertaining and fun show.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
it's the feel-good comedy of the year.
Okay. There's Brian's TV corner for you this week. I don't have a Brian's TV corner
theme. You lost the theme, or did we ever have one?
I don't think we ever had. We had Brian's movie corner. Brian's movie corner. Yeah, that was a good little intro.
Close enough.
We haven't hit a movie in a long time. Have you seen any movies lately?
Oh, I've seen lots of movies. I don't know that any that apply to what we're talking about. I've actually been keeping a list. But,
really?
You know what I saw was really good? This has nothing to do with clean energy, but The Ghost of Peter Sellers, a movie about the making of this pirate comedy movie in the early 70s, directed by Peter Medak. And Peter Sellers was a crazy man, and the whole film was a nightmare. One of those I like those movies about making movies that are a nightmare.
He was a crazy man in real life or a crazy man in the movie?
No, in real life, yeah. He was very unpredictable and, possibly undiagnosed bipolar or something. But
really?
Yeah, it's a really good, the documentary is directed by Peter Medak, who was the director of this film from the 70s that they eventually got it completed, but it was never released because it wasn't very good. And
was he always a problem?
What's that?
Was Peter Sellers always a problem on sets? Or did he just sort of go downhill?
It sounds like he was notoriously difficult.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, he faked a heart attack halfway through the shoot just so he wouldn't have to do it.
Oh, I did that on your film. I mean, it's not uncommon. It's a very George Costanza thing to do, but always fake a heart attack. So anyway, getting back to the survey, I just wanted to say that the most open that they were for the Ford F-150, and I don't necessarily blame them for that because there's a lot of doofuses who drive pickup trucks who don't really need a pickup truck and just need to accent their masculinity. But if you're looking for reliability, and most of the pickup trucks, regardless of brand, are quite reliable. In fact, the lesser reliable ones are from Toyota, by the way, which is known for reliability across their other brands. Yeah, they're reliable, and if you want to depend on something, you're going to go with what you know. And but I think that it'll be very interesting to see. This is something that we're going to start to see towards the end of the year. Some Rivians will be coming online and going off the assembly line. in June or something like that. And then at the end of the year, we might see a Cybertruck or two pop up. So it's going to be an interesting year.
Is spreading fast about electric vehicles. I mean, I think the results of that survey would have been much different
I agree.
A year ago when we started this podcast.
I totally agree with that.
Well, let's continue on that kind of vein with the story about Biden and the 645,000 vehicle fleet in the United States. He made a big announcement that they're going to switch over the entire U.S. federal vehicle fleet to electric vehicles. Of course, this is easier said than done, and I think maybe not even all of these vehicles exist because electric production hasn't really ramped up to where it needs to be. But this is a good indication of things to come. Things like post office vehicles, there's 225,000 U.S. post office vehicles, and those are now all going to be electric, and that's a big, big deal.
Yes, it is, and it's perfect. They have smaller routes to drive. They have start and stop, which is good with your regenerative braking because you're charging up as you stop. Electric vehicles excel in stop and go traffic. That's their where they are the most fuel efficient. So, yeah, I've read some things that some of these things are going to be hard to fulfill. Some specialized trucks, the FBI. I don't know what they're going to drive.
Yeah, like those vans, those surveillance vans that you see.
Yeah, the one
movies.
that's like the one that's outside my house. Yeah, it's got a little dish on it. Some guys in sunglasses come and go all the time. And I sometimes see them running out of my house with wires dangling from their pockets. So, yeah, that type of thing. And I don't know. It's interesting. I think we would do it in Canada if we had locally made EVs, which we're going to, and I think that's part of the federal government plan.
Yeah, and that was, of course, the other part of Biden's announcement is that these are going to be made in America electric vehicles. So again, you're sort of shortening, you're shrinking the available source if you're going to stick to American.
Yeah. So that'll be interesting to see. It's going to, I think it's going to give a boost to the advent of EVs. Let's talk about that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's just this overall awareness thing, like the fact that people even know that electric pickup trucks are coming. Like that's kind of remarkable. This is all moving very fast. I mean, we thought it would, that once there's a certain tipping point that things are going to move super fast, but now it's actually happening.
As one might wonder about, the necessity of a Keystone XL pipeline. I wanted to touch on that a bit because it's such a big political issue here in Canada, in Western Canada in particular. We live in Saskatchewan, and next door is Alberta, which has the oil sands, most of the oil sands. And there was a big backlash at our city council when an oil company or when four councillors on we live in a city of about 200,000, 220,000 now, something like that.
Yep.
And the four city councillors wanted to, discuss banning oil company sponsorship of things that are related to the city. I remember when my kids were little, one year my little kid was sponsored by the Co-op refinery, and I felt a little bit dirty about that. But for the most part, I'm indifferent about it. I don't think it's like going to encourage people to go buy a gas car. They're going to do what they're going to do. It's not like a tobacco company sponsoring. And if we have local companies that are employing people and making money and they want to give back to the community, I'm fine with that. But what is surprising is how people freaked out about it. Like, how dare you say anything nasty about the oil industry? And the premier was like threatening the city council with taking money away from them, and which just goes to show just how in the pocket of the oil industry he is, and how maybe out of touch that the oil industry is an actual sunset industry, and he should not be placing all of his bets on that. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It was a bigger fuss than it should have been, and it was mostly about naming rights. Like you can't have the Shell Oil Hockey Arena. Like it was a fairly limited scope that they were trying to ban in the first place, and it's something that doesn't even exist. Like there's no, the city probably isn't going to lose any money even if this thing were to pass. So it was one of those things where a lot of smoke, no real fire, but it is a fundamental problem because, like this other story here that we were going to talk about, New York City pension funds divest $4 billion from fossil fuels. This is now one of the largest divestments of fossil fuels from a large pension fund. And this is a reality that we can't escape. I mean, you may love fossil fuels and want to support the industry, but there's an objective reality going on here that it's all shrinking rapidly.
No, I think the best example, the big lesson from that is the former president of the United States trying to bring back coal, and he couldn't do it.
No.
Coal bankruptcies went up during his term, and the competitiveness of coal went down drastically. And that's going to be true for other energy as well, other fossil fuel energy, as we get more EVs on the market and their market share starts to get eroded and in a noticeable way. And then if they can't keep their control of their stock to control price and keep it up, and a lot of people think they won't be able to because of the abundance of shale in the United States and the lack of cooperation between Russia and OPEC sometimes, I think it's going to be problematic, and they're not going to be able to keep the price up consistently. And as supply goes, oversupply happens, people are going to want to make money at any price.
No, and just back to the previous story, 645,000 federal U.S. vehicles going electric. I mean, that's almost, that's a crazy amount of vehicles that in itself is going to have an impact on the demand for oil. And, once that starts happening, they're going to need less oil from Canada. And
Tesla is opening up shop, starting to get in place in India. And by the way, we can't say anything bad about India because I just read a story this morning that a comedian was put in jail because of a joke he was planning to tell about Hindu people.
Just planning to tell it.
He was planning to tell. They came in and raided him and took him away before he even told any jokes. So, yes, we have a active listenership in India. However, we're not going to cross any lines. And, because I'd like to go to India someday and not be arrested. It's a shame that that's going on, but, just we make fun of things sometimes. Hello, India, if you're listening, and the people outside in the white van, hello to you as well. Those make up a large part of our audience, those people in the van outside, so that's important. I laugh at myself. So there's been some talk about how pension funds are not divesting from fossil fuels and that they're going to get screwed by doing that. There's been concern going around that I think, for an example, the Ontario Teachers Pension Fund has not divested from fossil fuels, and they're going to be in a world of hurt. Their fund is going to, people's retirements are going to be in jeopardy if they don't carefully look at what fossil fuels, the path that's going on.
Well, there's a nice quote here from the mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, in this announcement about the pension funds. And the quote is, "Fossil fuels are not only bad for our planet and our frontline communities, they are a bad investment."
That is something that happened last year. I think that was the beginning of what 2020 was. It was a big turning point in divestment and a big shift in thinking. And it seems like that is continuing as we've now reached the biggest divestment from a pension fund.
Yeah, it only makes sense. It's trillions of dollars of the economy are moving from one place to another place.
All right, coming up in moments, it's the lightning round, where I'll be throwing all kinds of questions at Brian and headlines and things like that. Brian, what else do you have for major stories this week?
Well, there was a nice study about how much Canadian traffic dropped in 2020 because of the pandemic. So do you have any guesses, like Vancouver, Toronto? How much do you think the traffic dropped in those major cities?
22%.
Vancouver dropped 30%.
Really?
And Toronto dropped 22%. Montreal 20%, Ottawa 19%, Winnipeg 17%. There's no figure for our city, but we would be probably in that similar 15%.
Wow. Now, is that for the whole pandemic, or
Well, it's the year
peak.
2020,
the whole year. That's what traffic went down.
Yeah, so January, February would have been normal traffic. So, 30% in Vancouver. That's huge.
That is huge. That's and one would have to wonder. I mean, they're saying that maybe we've been too optimistic about remote jobs not going back to normal. That they think that I've heard some argument that managers are going to want to be face to face with people, and but we'll see how that plays out. But it could be a major shift. I mean, maybe it's not fully going to stay the same, but it's going to probably reduce traffic, which is good. You have a tough position. You're a university professor teaching film production, and it's not good for you to be at home in your safe bomb shelter there with your radon. And what else do you have?
Oh, and I was going to say, my radon levels are not as low as I would like them to be. I put in that heat recovery ventilator last year, but I've been monitoring the numbers, and they don't seem as low as they were last winter. So I don't know. I may have to work on the radon gas in my house.
Like, are they above the threshold?
Yeah, like 300-ish.
What's the
It's
threshold?
supposed to be 200 or lower.
200 or lower. And that's with the ventilator. Do you think that it's...
So I don't know. I've got it cranked up to 5. We'll see if that helps. But I was kind of disappointed about that.
Is it possibly the 3 freeze-thaw patterns or anything? Do you have any theories as to... I don't know how radon works, if it just burps up whenever it wants to, like a volcano. But
I imagine it is, different depending on the environmental conditions, depending on the weather. It probably does change. So
we did have a warm winter, remember?
Maybe just because it's been a milder winter. That might be it. Like the ground is less frozen. I don't know.
Yeah, it's colder now, Brian. It's colder. Do you have anything else this week?
No, that's good for me.
All right, people, it's time for the lightning round. The Clean Energy Show lightning round. Brian, how are you today? You feeling strong about this? You feeling good?
No, I told you at the beginning.
You're tired.
I'm tired. I had a terrible sleep.
This may be not a good lightning round then. I mean, if you're tired, do you want to have a nap before we do it? I mean, how should we approach this?
Sure. We'll just have 5 minutes of silence in the podcast while I have a nap.
A little bit of light snoring, and everyone can... Maybe we could just have a nap time like kindergarten. We'll just all nap together. I'm almost at a point where I can do that. I never used to nap at all. You couldn't pay me to nap. I could not nap if I had a gun to my head, and now I can't not nap. It's terrible. I'm just getting old is no fun at all. I just saw this pop up on Electric, and I want to mention it is because it's interesting. Nissan is unveiling a electric winter camper comset van. Winter. That's very interesting. So it's basically like a Ford Transit vehicle. It's on a car platform and a tall van-like vehicle. And they have heaters in it and electric stove. So I thought that was interesting. I wouldn't camp in winter, but I would camp in what they call shoulder season in the camping community. That is your April, May, June, September, October, because that's a big problem with camping is that it's overcrowded. Also, I'm thinking about going to the Rockies camping this year again, if it opens, because I'm thinking it might open and there might be an overabundance of demand for locals, but the international people probably won't start coming in. It might be a good year to go. But then I have no idea the way things are going or if I'll be alive. And if this new variant is going to get me. Anyway, Brian, let's start. Let's start with my bookmarks. I just wanted to say that Vancouver is getting 15 electric buses added to its fleet. So that's another thing. That's another... I expect this is going fairly strong. There are cities in China that are 100% electric buses. But, the price point is coming down and down. In fact, bus batteries are the cheapest per kilowatt that there are right now. And so that's going to, just the cost of that, right?
And I think they still have some electric trolley buses in Vancouver, with the overhead wires.
Oh, yeah.
I think they still have some of those.
That's kind of a messy business, those wires. It would be nice not to have those wires. Would you agree with that? I mean, it's kind of historic.
Not ideal. Fully electric battery operated buses is definitely better for sure.
When you're not used to them and you think that there's high voltage wires hanging over your head, it's kind of freaky to go to a city with those around. So the Hyundai Ioniq 5 will be getting a release pretty soon. It looks like February 1st is going to be release of that. That is, if I'm not mistaken, that's a mid-size SUV. This is not the crossover business that we've been talking about in 2020 with your Ford Mustangs and your Tesla Model Ys. This is a full-on, forgive me, India, big-ass SUV. So that's something to look forward to. Would you ever? You would never consider an SUV. You're not the SUV kind.
Yeah, it's not really my thing, but...
If somebody gave you a Humvee, an electric Humvee, would you put it in your driveway and cruise to school in it?
No, I'd be embarrassed to have one of those. Yeah.
I think it's a cool car.
Cool.
Hummers are just, stupid overall, but I would certainly not kick that out of bed if somebody gifted me one. I'd probably drive it around for a year or so. Maybe I'd get used to it and have gold chains and... grow a greasy mustache or something like that. So, more than 60% of fleets would see a financial gain, according to a new study right now. So, if you converted your fleet, if you're a fleet manager, you've got, say, you're a cable company, you've got 30 cable vans. If you converted that fleet to electric right now, today, actually yesterday, 60% of the fleets would see financial gains. And you think, well, EVs are more expensive. No, 60%. And I suspect, Brian, that that's going to go up to 80% next year or the year after. And no more than 3 years from now, every fleet that there is will see a financial gain. So that's another big thing, because once you have massive amounts of vehicles and it's going to save you money, you can't ignore that.
Yeah, any business that owns a calculator can figure this out, and it'll be cheaper for sure.
Do you have a calculator at your business?
I got one on my watch.
Oh, you're one of those people. I think I had somebody in grade 4 who had one of those LED watches. Do you remember those?
I ordered a kit calculator watch from Popular Science magazine back in the 1970s. It was a build-your-own pocket calculator watch, and I built it myself, and it never worked.
Oh, that's the most disappointing thing I've ever heard.
Oh, it was terrible. I was devastated.
Do you have that must have shaped your whole life, man? I mean,
yes,
it sculpted your personality in possibly a negative way.
Yes,
I mean that's just
absolutely.
a horribly child abuse would be less worse on you than that. I mean, it was just horrible. How did you deal with it?
Yeah, it was hard. And I had to learn how to use a soldering iron.
Oh, you had to solder it.
It was really hard.
You probably breathed in lead solder back in the day.
I probably did.
This is not good for you. It's amazing you're alive. That and the radon, you may not make it through the nap time. You may not wake up from that nap. Maybe you better not take that nap. Anyway, yes, 225,000 of those vehicles are going to the Postal Service, and everyone on the internet is saying, my postal truck sucks because it stinks. I want electric. So that's one thing going on. So there's a dynamic wireless charging road for trucks. That is made with 70 kilowatts from the road as you drive down this road. And I think that charging roads, although cool, are stupid because I can't imagine how expensive they are and how little charge you would get. And you have to add a wireless.
It's going to cost too much. It's cool, but it's going to cost too much.
It might be interesting for, say, a big bus hub in some situations, although I think it's cheaper just to have something come down from on top of them. But, I mean, you could theoretically have wireless charging for your buses if they went to, like, say, downtown, what do you call them, like a just a central place where all the buses go.
Yeah, like a turnaround yard.
No, I'm thinking like right on the street, like downtown
Right.
somewhere where every bus sort of converges and stuff like that. So, Saskatchewan, the province where we live, 1.1 million people, had the lowest number of road fatalities in 60 years last year. That was partially due to the pandemic, I'm guessing, less driving. We don't have any stats. However, it was also low the year before, and it was like only 66 to 72% or something of the normal numbers. Do you have any theory as to why road fatalities are going down? Cars are getting safer, but is that the story?
Yeah, I think that's probably the main thing. Every year, cars get a little bit more robust to accidents, and safety features like automatic braking and whatnot. It's starting to have an effect, I would think.
Yes, and stability control, which became mandatory in Canada and the United States, and I think in 2012 when I bought my first new car. That's the reason why I bought it, because the stats were phenomenal. It was reducing just that one feature alone, electronic stability control. It kicks in when you're fishtailing and so forth.
Yeah.
Reduced, based on stats from luxury vehicles that they had for the previous 12 years, reduced fatalities and serious injuries by 40%. So I'm thinking, that's why I bought a new car. That's one of the reasons is like I started to think about that stuff. Boy, the 30-year-old James would not be thinking about safety, but now life is more fragile. As we know, we can't even nap without risk these days. So the EU is calling for a global coal ban phase out. The whole European Union is calling for a phase out by 2030, which is the first time because we're actually doing it in Canada nationally, although I think our province got us sort of an extension on that. Do you have any thoughts?
Well, I'm not sure the EU can dictate what the rest of the world does, but it's a nice thought.
Well, they're getting rid of their own coal, I guess, and I don't know how many new nuclear plants are being built in the world, but I don't think is there any on the books? There's probably some that were started 20 years ago that are still in construction. China's got a few.
Yeah. I'm not sure. We'd have to look into that. And of course, they've been talking about small modular nuclear reactors. This is the latest buzzword, smaller nuclear power plants. But, even those, I don't know, it seems crazy expensive, lots of regulations. The safety is so difficult. I mean, there's probably some in the works somewhere. But, who knows?
So China is working on reducing the emissions, the carbon emissions from the steel industry. And the China, you may not know, produces half the steel in the whole world. The whole stinking world, half the steel made is from China.
Wow, I had no idea.
That's a lot, and they're aggressively working on emissions. So maybe they'll come up with some technology, So researchers claim, here's another battery claim, that the redox flow battery breakthrough will cost only $25 per kilowatt hour or less. And, I think the cheapest now is around 87 to 100, and the average is like $130 per kilowatt hour, at least for electric cars. So it's a flow battery. This is something that you would use in grid storage. And if it's true, $25 would reshape the renewable industry quite quickly because it would be so cheap that you would just... you're factoring, this is part of solar. When you think of building solar, when you think of building wind, you will now think of building, well, what will the cost of the battery be, the storage be? Like we're going to start to see renewable energy built with storage almost all the time. At some point, you would think that it would get to that point. So $25 would change the world quite quickly. But as always, Brian, we're skeptical. We're skeptical about battery breakthroughs and battery claims.
Yeah, we've got to see it to believe it, but there's obviously going to be different types of batteries for different solutions. And yeah, I remember reading about flow batteries, and yeah, they have the potential. They're not the highest performance batteries, but they have the potential to be possibly the cheapest.
Well, the Ford Mach-E has already shown that it has a better residual value than the Mustang Coupe, the normal Mustang without, it's the Mach-E is a different form factor, as it being electric, but they're already showing that it's a better investment to buy. The Mustangs have fairly good residual value too because they're a coveted car, but the Mach-E is doing well. And I noticed that the original Tesla Roadsters are starting to go up in value with collectors, too.
Yeah, they only made 2,000 or 3,000 of those Tesla Roadsters, and they're starting to creep up in value with all these new Tesla Airs out there with the stock price going crazy.
So there's Electric had a story about a Alibaba electric truck, which is a place that I was going to buy it's kind of like would you say it's the Amazon of China, the Alibaba store, kind of like that?
Yes.
It's a little bit weird, and you don't know always what you're getting, if it's reliable, and it can take weeks and weeks to come over on a ship to get here and clear customs. But they're selling a $4,000 electric pickup truck, $4,000 US. And it's tiny.
Yeah, I had a quick look at that story. It's kind of small.
It's small, but I mean, it's not a bicycle
kind of thing, but it looks cool.
If it has a heater inside, and I'm not sure that it does, I could send my kid to high school in that thing. Oh, well, he would not do that. He would rather walk naked than drive. It's just a cute little pickup truck. It's I don't. We laugh at these things here, but in Europe and in China and India, they're not going to be laughing at this stuff. They're going to be buying this stuff. It's going to work well in their climates, and it's going to work well on smaller streets in Europe. And I can see this changing things. I mean, there's people driving around on polluting scooters in India now that are going to be replaced with electric scooters, and that's going to be a big deal because the scooters actually make a lot of pollution, just like your lawnmower does. It's not really regulated.
Yeah, even though they're quite small, the pollution controls tend to be poor, yeah.
So Boeing says that it would deliver 100% biofuel planes by 2030. They've done a test on this before, and they're saying that their planes will be able to run on biofuel. Where do you stand on biofuel? Because it seems to me it's kind of controversial that the benefits aren't that great.
Yeah, you still burn it and it still creates emissions. So it's I guess, interim solution.
I know when they started making corn crops and converting field farms to corn for biofuels, they were making more greenhouse emissions, that it wasn't green at all in the early 2020s, 2000s. And so all electric BC ferries, that's what is going to happen here. There is a ferry in BC that is going for full electrification of its hybrid vessels. So it has hybrid vessels now, and ferries are a great opportunity in shipping to convert to electric. And I noticed there was even a solar-powered electric yacht coming out. If I was going to buy a yacht, Brian, and I'm not, and I know that you probably are yacht shopping almost every day with your Tesla stock going up.
Oh, yeah.
Would you buy a solar-powered electric yacht?
I mean, if I was going to buy a yacht, that's absolutely the kind I would buy, for sure.
Your damn Tesla stock is up again. Pisses me off. How high can it go?
Yeah, what are you going to do?
Sell, man. Sell. It can't go any higher. I said that at 900. I said it at 2,000. And now it's like the equivalent of... I don't even want to think about it. It's thousands and thousands. It's ridiculous. 879. I mean, are you going to buy more? Are you going to sell? Because there's talk of the stock market being a bubble. I'm telling everyone, sell your stocks. It's going to be a bubble. That's my advice. I'm not a stock expert, but yes.
Yeah, it's entirely possible we're in a bit of a bubble, but the Tesla stock's up so much that even if it were to crash in half, it would still be a substantial gain for most people.
Well, Brian, I don't want the show to end, but that's it for this week. It's been another entertaining and fun week talking to you about all the stories in clean energy. We like to hear from our listeners. We seldom do. We know you're there. cleanenergyshow@gmail.com. That's called an email for you younger listeners out there. You can send us an email. We're on the Twitter, Clean Energy Pod. You can DM us, you can tweet us, you can retweet us, you can ask questions. And we're also on speakpipe.com/cleanenergyshow. And that's where you can leave us a voice message. And yes, we've gone too long, Brian. I've stopped being able to talk properly this week. My mouth is no longer functioning.
It's nap time.
It's nap time. So everybody go have a nap. Enjoy it. We'll have a communal nap together. And we'll see you next week on the Clean Energy Show.
Yeah, see you next week.